We're just waiting for Adrian to join us in the live stream. Hope you like the intro. Today we're talking about the DORA report from 2024. You didn't miss anything yet. We're just waiting for a minute or two to situate ourselves. For Adrian is making another, I think, coffee. Although it's a little bit late for coffee, but hey. How's everybody doing? Where are you tuning in from? Happy to chat. I have some links to share with Adrian. I can just give you guys some music before Adrian's back. Then we're gonna pick it up soon.
Hello.
Hello. Got your coffee?
I have my coffee.
Okay. Should we leave some background music? Is that gonna be okay?
Yeah, we can.
A little bit of background music. Okay. People slowly trickling in. Adrian, if you look at private chat, I'm gonna drop 2 links right now that I would like to screen share or reference during the stream.
Yep.
If you have something of your own, just share it now.
No,
so
I
that
don't
can...
I have nothing prepared for that. I was
Okay.
thinking you provide those things, so.
Yeah, I have. It's okay. I was just wondering if there's anything you want to add, that then we can show it. What I actually like to put on screen first is a quick intro from the report.
Let's go.
There we go. The researchers at the DORA group were kind enough to give us an executive summary document. So we have an executive summary of the report itself. This one is obviously opinionated because somebody had to decide what of these things are more important than the others. The key metrics are still a major focus point for most.
So we have 3.
Productivity
No, we have
improvements.
2 major points, right?
This is just an infographic. This is like a teaser. It's covering like the new ideas, the sexy ideas, just to inspire you to read the actual report.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but then the two big things is AI adoption and platform engineering.
Yes. So last year, 2022, it was mostly about burnout and security because we had those like huge security incidents with the infrastructure attacks, the hacks from Russia, the voting, the election interference and stuff like that. And then last year, 2023, huge highlight was 2023 highlights were user centrism, focusing, making your end user, your customer part of your value stream analysis, continuous integration, and everybody who saw it, continuous delivery / continuous integration and trunk-based development having like a negative effect on burnout. I think that was the one that was most controversial, and it turned out to be like a measuring error. It ended up being misrepresented intuitively in how the data was
to be
charted.
Honest, measuring burnout is kind of topic of its own. I wouldn't even try to do that. So asking the people, and oftentimes it's not really developers you ask, it's their superiors, sometimes the CTOs.
Now,
like ask, hey, how is it with the burnout rate? And it's great.
I'm not a data scientist, so I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is exactly how AI was measured this year.
Yeah.
Because people just asked, people were surveyed. It was the methodology for analyzing impact of AI right now was qualitative. So they didn't check the actual metrics. I mean, the metrics they checked were actually negative. But when they asked in the survey, they said, do you use it? Do you feel more productive? Is it helping you? Do you trust it? And that is, similar to how burnout was measured. And we got some good results. So it is what it is. I wouldn't dismiss it. There's going to be some interesting insights regarding that. But suffice to say, you're not going to escape talks about AI and various forms of AI and Gen AI and LLMs and RAGs in the context of engineering productivity, organizational productivity, documentation productivity, etc. So I wanted to start. We're 7 minutes in. I think everybody who wanted to join is now here with us. I set the agenda for 4 things. One I've already covered, which is the changes from 2023. Then talk about AI, particularly how the DORA analysis was conducted regarding AI. Flow and value stream mapping. Those are a little bit new concepts that are worth talking about. And then team performance and general productivity, which is the general idea, the meat and potatoes of the DORA report, which is the strong baseline that we see unchanging, which is this like black box here, key metrics. Yes, this was very strong last year. It continues to be strong. No updates, so TLDR, the DORA metrics works. The research makes sense. And the measurements are a positive contribution to our industry. What's your take on DORA metrics, Adrian? Do you use them, not use them, abuse them, know about them, hate them?
I'm reading through those, but in fact, I think I'm too small of a company that they really take effect on us, and it's not really relatable, but it's interesting, and it's there are some truth in it, like the idea of how especially the all the engineering things work, and how it was very interesting to see how TDD or how they saw these things in the last years, because that is actually what you can reflect, but the majority of participants in DORA are from companies who are established.
That's not true.
Yeah, but the majority, it's about that, and that's the point. So, and I would say I'm gonna stick with that. And the point about that is that there is a difference between companies who basically start to become established or want to get to the point, and there are companies who are established already. And then are institutional companies as well, though they are different again. And what I see very often is DORA, and when you listen to people like Abi, Nora, people like that, so right, then you have often this problem that we would be talking about mid-sized plus companies, but most people I know are not part of these companies. And there's still an overlooked part, and this is what I don't like with the DORA report. So you can take some learnings out of that, but it is not there is no direct report for the majority of current software development out there. And that is very often in smaller companies, which they are simply, I would call it, under the radar. And this is what I don't like that much about the DORA report. So it tends to be like interesting for the large companies, yet it might take into consideration everyone, that's true, but it is focused on another target group. This is what I dislike. But what I like is to actually read about those findings. Do I apply something from that? No, I don't. To be honest, the things I found in DORA, even the first time when I was reading it, they were already clear to me. The good thing with DORA reports are that they give you a current reflection. So it's the very same thing like State of JS or something like that, where I'm interested in the current trends.
Yeah, it's very similar to that. Yeah. So if you are the kind of company to focus on fashion and what's fashionable in the industry, then this would, I think, be the most relevant and authoritative source to look for, rather than your favorite YouTuber or us or Reddit. I think the DORA metric is the DORA group and the research, the data, even if you don't use the key metrics, I think are a key sort of authority on what is reasonable to be copied in the industry. But again, the DORA metrics are not meant to be used as a baseline for standard for the industry.
Yeah.
They're meant to give you an intuition of what kind of experiments, intuition and inspiration on what kind of experiments may be worthwhile for you to run in your own organization.
I know many people who reference to DORA to make points clear how we should work. Maybe the DORA report isn't stating a best practice, but people state their best practices in reference to DORA to say, hey, you see, it is basically based on scientific research.
Yeah.
My problem is I don't think, especially when we take the AI now, we will go through that, I don't think that is so research styly. This is not really the case. So we asking people how they feel about things. So that is more like a general research, but not a scientific one. So we don't have A/B tests here. We don't have specific settings or the same settings. So everyone is basically talking about his or her standpoint based on the context they are in, and that can vastly differ from each other. So that's developer is not a developer, right? There are thousands of different versions of what a developer is, how AI is actually used today. But let's go through it. Don't waffle about that too much. That's what be interesting.
So what was interesting to me is that, I don't know what you meant exactly with established. I'm assuming established would mean older companies in the sort of 10,000 and more. That it is true that I can hear the jingle from the video. Are you listening to it?
No. I was actually starting the music, but it was next music track. Just ignore that. I just turned it.
Sorry. Oh, I see. Okay. No, but we can play it. It's okay. So my point was that the report does, of course, focus on large companies, but most of what I know to be in the sort of startup and scale-up world is in these numbers.
Yeah, for me,
and that
small is up to 99. That is for me small. Everything else is already mid-sized company.
And that's a good quarter, right? So most of the interviewed or included, research surveyed, etc., self-assessed companies or engineers in these companies were from industries that I think reasonably match our target audience, which is small to medium businesses. There's that. Then on the other side, there's what I found really interesting is this. Are these two actually on the next 2 pages? Is the one about how long overall, how long in the current role, which is predominantly,
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the numbers. Yeah, you can see the numbers. Yeah, so
not really. Now
the working experience of the average person being surveyed is 16 years, with 3 years on the current team and 5 years in the current role, which is great to see. It's also an indication that the sort of the more professional echelons of software engineers are aging. It used to be the case that we just keep getting younger and younger and younger as an industry because it's being dominated by self-taught engineers who are 20, 22, 24. So it's nice to see that, that our experience is closer to baseline, that we're not sort of old developers waffling out about business and strategy. So that it is, our context is, at least to the degree to capture the key demographic, it is let's say, the core audience. That's one aspect. The other one that's really interesting to me is that most of the people being surveyed are engineers and engineering managers, which again, core audience of our channel, of our channels, and of our content. And in there are also CTOs and such, but I don't think the word CTO is used here. They might also represent a very small part of the sample, especially in the context of larger companies. Yeah, so it's the CTO to engineer ratio is not a normal distribution. So on this chart they would fall off, but I'm sure there are a non-trivial amount of CTOs in there that just fell off on statistical relevance. Maria, hello. It's great to have you with us live. How are you doing? I'll stop sharing because I think preview is that PDF is being shared at a very, very high quality, and it's making me okay. I'm back. Yes.
It was okay for me. So
I saw. Yeah, I saw my preview. I was a bit jumpy, so I wasn't sure. So there's that. Now, what I did prepare is I did write up a quick rundown on this for Grow CTO. This will be going out on. This will be growing. This is a draft. It will be growing out on Sunday. So I might as well highlight this one because I already paraphrased it today. This is interesting. So, is it large enough?
Yes.
So the columns are the same. The colors are different. The numbers are the same for the most part. What's new, I think, is the last column, which is the percentage of respondents. So now we can finally see how, what sample from the overall surveyed companies actually fits into the elite category. So it's not some like weird, 1 out of every 1,000 companies, like unicorn status, but a good fifth of all companies do deploy several times per day on demand. They respond to bugs in less than an hour, and that fits into the elite performance category, which is very interesting to see. So that at least we have some kind of reality check that this is a normal distribution, where most companies are sort of in that medium to high middle range, and that elite performance is something that is achievable and sort of available for you on like a reasonable progression path, maybe a few years at the worst, and it's not some kind of like 0.001%, the 1% of the 1% of the top companies that only Meta or Google are elite performers. So this is nice for context. I'm not going to go into the key details here. The key metrics we waffle on about a lot. We can have a very specific episode about the key metrics if our audience is interested in that.
To be honest, I was even thinking that especially the elite side is actually not that often in the larger or medium-sized to larger companies, because they have often like these very complex structures, which makes it actually quite impossible to be elite.
Yeah.
The elite is more like the smaller, like
the disruptors in the markets.
Yeah, exactly.
The less so, maybe not IBM, but maybe Uber. Maybe not Cisco, but Airbnb. Yeah. Stripe rather than PayPal, I think would be a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't actually have data on that, but I do recall an interview from Stripe's CTO, and they fit the bill for the elite performance category. Spotify is a notable example. Netflix, so being able to release on demand. So whenever a fix is ready, it can go out. Once the pipeline passes.
These companies shape a lot on social media as well, on open source, on how best practices. Airbnb linter rules, for example, in the TypeScript world, React world, are very famous. They even established a form of standard there, how things should work.
Controversially, I heard that Airbnb didn't actually use the Airbnb rules.
But they were
That's
updating
something
and maintaining it. So how is it possible then?
I don't know. But it seems odd.
I heard rumors that rumors were occurring about the rumors. Let's take a look what actually happens. So we were getting updates, and I was
I have
reading
no
update
contacts in
notes,
Airbnb, so
I'm pretty sure that at least some of them were using it, or at least thinking of some form of standard we should use, but maybe we don't. But what I mean by that is you have the same with the Spotify model and those kind of things where people talk openly about how they made things and let others participate and inspire. So they try to, as you said, disrupt things, rethink things, sometimes to the good, sometimes to the bad, of course, but this is how iterations are working. You need to test things in order to know about them. And that is what especially companies like Cisco and Microsoft were never very good in it. The newer companies Microsoft acquired are working like that, but Microsoft itself, not so much. At least what I know. I never were there, so I just see what the Microsoft products and the worlds we are, especially the traditional server-side world, is very rigid, let's say.
Yeah. In context of AI, what's really... So it's not surprising to me that everybody's using AI. Everybody's trying to cram AI into their workflows. I
would say no. People are not trying to implement that; they already using it. I think we are already past that stage. I just released for 4 days a video where I researched myself again about the current state of AI. I was even referring to DORA, the part actually of the DORA report as well. And
what did you find?
We will go through it, and then I will talk about it when we are at the spot. This is easier than to connect to it. It's actually a bigger topic. But the initial question was, I was starting with a very interesting thing that many C-suite people of larger companies, the AWS Cloud Boss and people like that, really say that we want to replace people. And that in reality, so the wish is real, but the reality is different. So we don't replace people. We actually replace how we work with it. So we substitute and we change the way we work in, and we change the industry. That is what actually happens, because the demand is still there. And I compared that to the car industry. The car industry was totally differently basically evolving. So we basically have more cars with less people built. And in the software space, we actually have more people and more people and more people, and sometimes a little bit less and more again. And that is because of the digitization demand. So IT is not in its own IT, so it's just a small part of it. IT is supporting all the other domain sectors on this planet these days. So you basically grow with the current demand on this planet. And that is the interesting part, which we actually cannot replace developers, because the AI is not capable of taking the job in its entirety. But I think the main finding is that a good portion of what we call what we call coding today will be very different in the next 2 decades. I was talking with Stefan Schmidt, the CTO, last week about that. And in that discussion, we had that. It was in a video as well. We even had that on YouTube. That was an interesting part as well. I even was stating that I'm not even sure if we're still coding in 15 years or 10 years even, because we will see more low code. We will see even no code solutions done by AI. And I think one of the big mistakes right now is to judge the AI about the current state of what it can do. So it's even in the last half year, it was basically surprising me several times of the jumps, the leaps it actually made in order to get better. And today it is very good in what it's created. A year ago, when I first used Copilot, it was a little bit like, I actually deleted it again. It was so I can't use it. And
I think I need to try it again.
Like I don't want to work when it's not there anymore, because I actually waste time. There are so many spots where I actually have that. And that is just the status quo that's today. And we're talking about 1.5, maybe 2 years of using these tools now. And now fast forward 10, 20 years. you will see a different world. We are still there, but we're doing development differently. And I'm 100% sure about that. So focusing more on the engineering part instead of the coding part is what we, in my opinion, should do. It hurts because I'm a programming things 32 years, maybe 33 years now, starting on Commodore and Amiga in BASIC, writing programs there. I love that, right? But it becomes less and less of importance. Today it's extremely important still, and it will be the next years, no question. But it will change. And we need to understand that AI isn't a trendy thing, right? It's a trend, of course, but it's not a trendy thing. It is here to stay. It is already established. It is not a question if this will be established. It is established. Many people don't tell that they don't want to admit that they use AI because they want to look, hey, I can do that without AI, right? In reality, they already try it because they are afraid of what happens if they don't use it. And I see that will be basically going away in the next years. And we will see that we will be more the pilots, while we have co-pilots which are actually doing the coding. And we will be more orchestrating everything and being way more closer to what actually happens at the client side. So you working with the client, working with the domain, the software engineer will become an engineer, not a coder. So we use the terminology software engineer actually way too often without thinking about that. But real engineering is not about coding per se. It is about why, how, architecture, domain, long-term consequences, optimizations, those economic constraints. Which developers really taking a look at economic constraints? No one, right? And that's
a good point because it's also a double-edged sword when it comes to productivity. I just want to highlight the top use cases that were reported are essentially blank canvas problems where, if you write function and you're going to do the same for loop you always did, it'll give you that state, and then you can modify it, and it sort of helps you go from an empty file or an empty document or an empty diagram or an empty ticket or an empty note to something that is already half written that you can then modify and curate or just throw away by benefiting from just having the ideas of having read something else very quickly. Plus, I've been speaking to a lot of other coaches as well that confirm the bottom two, which is summarizing information and explaining legacy parts of the code base. So where you can sort of select like some old part of the code base that you don't know anymore, and you can ask it. Usually you can ask it, hey, why do you think this was written in such a way? Can you check the GitHub history? What do I need to look out for? Where do you think the most risk is when it's in terms of coupling or testability? You can have these kinds of conversations, and it might, if it's one file, you'll probably get much better trustworthy answers from just eyeballing it yourself. But if it's 100,000 lines of code, then it giving you like a few key areas to start on will definitely be a huge sort of time saver for you.
You see that already in tools like CodeScene and stuff like that.
So CodeScene does
enormously help you get an overview of what you actually build.
Or things like video summaries. You give it a 2-hour video and ask, hey, I'm gonna watch through, but like, where are the highlights? And it gives you the highlights. You start with the highlights, you get some context, and then you watch through if you think you need more detail. So I think that effect is happening a lot in coding. I see that with myself. I see that with my clients. I see that with other engineering leaders who are not engineers. I see them do that with meeting transcripts, with getting sentiment. I met a startup in Romania when I was on How to Web. They had a cool product that basically says it checks the meeting transcripts from like a meeting. This is in technology, right? So it's software engineers meeting with engineering managers, stakeholders. And the tool analyzes two things. Was there consensus in the meeting, right? So were they on point or waffling? And which decisions were actionable? Which conversations actually led to actionable insights rather than just conversation.
Yeah.
And then they use that to sort of gauge the productivity of a meeting, or to give people tips of, hey guys, we went, off topic, we had to bring it back, and then it helps sort of highlight what's going on.
Hello, Emmanuel.
Hey, Emmanuel. Maria also replied, hey, doing great. Thanks for asking. All right. Glad to hear that. What is surprising, and I want to switch screens right now to the other one. AI has been reported. So AI usage in code writing has been reported as a productivity decrease. So engineers report that individually it feels better. They're in flow more. So they produce more code. They feel more productive because it helps them produce more code. But the DORA research data suggests that for team performance, what's really important is for the team to work in small batch sizes. So as you become more productive in the amount of lines of code that you generate or how fast you generate them, the batch sizes increase, which has a negative impact on overall product velocity. That has been my suspicion, and I'm glad we had some data on it to at least give it some backing. This will make a lot more sense if I zoom it in. So the point is, yes, you feel a lot more productive. You do a lot less typing. So you produce a lot more code with it, a lot less typing. You feel a little bit faster, which is great for, it's great for well-being. It's great for mental health. It's great for burnout. But then you can get carried away. You produce a larger batch size, and we know that larger batch sizes slow down the really nasty stuff like code reviews. They can slow down pull requests. They can block any kind of change advisory boards from making a decision. You might introduce merge conflict issues if you're not doing trunk-based development. So it can lead to issues. Plus, if you're generating a lot of code very quickly and you're not actually test covering it for behavioral understanding, for the why and the how, you'll end up with a lot more code that you have to review that's not automatically test covered by testing automation or
but that
somebody
is,
who
basically all of these things refer to a problem that we actually have AI but no AI competency, which means that we use AI in just like, hey, just use it, right? Just generate yourself.
Oh, but I can see that the font is too small. So there's a minus sign. Yeah, there is a minus sign on the circles, right? So increasing AI adoption by 25%, reduces delivery throughput by 2% and delivery stability by 7%.
So I can definitely state then when I do coding, this is definitely not negative. And the point is, what I do is I code most of the parts still myself, but there are some tedious works which requires more mental capacity, like more complex things and stuff like that, algorithms, complex loops where you can, a human takes a while until you go through these things. And I try to only pass, I don't use code generation externally, I only use it at the cursor. So it's basically helping me to complete what I want to do. The only prompting I do is basically comments, which I delete right after that again. So it is basically the way how I help Copilot.
So you give context in like a comment block.
And that works extremely well, right? Because it is only, it is not defining the entire function, because there is a big downside, and this is what I call the AI competency. If I have a big function or a big class, and I pass the entire class to an AI and say I want to have this, and this changed, and suddenly if you are not like, if you don't, probably if you prompt it wrong or don't think about that, you get way more changes that you actually need to actually make. And that will cause a lot of conflicts working together with other people.
It'll overfit for wanting to change something across the entire class rather than keeping cohesion high on like one bug fix.
And the other aspect is that now people who actually were unable to contribute, start to contribute now because they have now a tool which they can
Yeah,
use
juniors
in
have
order
higher
to
velocity, but they're not good enough to gauge the
yeah,
efficacy or the correctness or
and that's the
to,
problem. I saw
to
code
quickly
in,
eyeball whether they should trust the output or not.
yeah, I saw code in our own code bases even from a while ago, which was created by people who actually weren't supposed to create that kind of content, but they were suddenly able to. And I basically removed that code again. I basically refactored it, and that was not going through any form of review in that moment. It was basically passing. That was something I wasn't expecting. So that was new to me that things like that occur, because normally these type of levels of developers don't produce that kind of complex algorithmic code or something like that. That was, so we had no, let's say, no workflow for that, and now we have, and I'm working strongly to develop something like an AI competency, and that is clearly to make people understand that junior developers are actually not or should not use AI in the form like a senior is using it. So you should only use AI. So let's phrase it like this: if you are in a production environment where it matters, you should use the AI to complete what you already know and what you can determine, what you can basically review yourself and say, yes, this is how would I do that, and this is what
AI will not make you a smarter developer.
Exactly. And
it can give you your level of competence with some time savers.
And this is the problem, that juniors actually don't have much room where they actually can use AI effectively, which is the reason why they shouldn't. In my opinion, juniors should be, and companies should be, seeing juniors more like the typical apprentice role. But that was heavily forgotten in the startup age, where everyone tried to get mid-level developers on senior positions to pay less for them, and that was like distorting the market very heavily.
Very much,
right?
yeah.
And so we often forget that junior developers are not yet fully production ready developers. That's how it is. It always was, right? And but today they are treated like that. And if you give the junior developer now an AI tool and says, hey, now you are a mid-level developer, no, you are not. You can't just create code, which might be a good thing, but might be not as well, but you can't say if it's okay or not. And what you do then is to put more work on the people who actually don't have that much time to actually review your stuff, because you're producing way more stuff, and this is displayed in the in the DORA report as well. You start to produce way more code, but this code isn't pre-reviewed by the developer him or herself. That's the problem, and that's so. If only seniors would work in a company, and they are very good in what they do, they are a good team, and then they use AI, there will be no problem. It will be a performance boost. But since you don't have that, and oftentimes you don't even write tests for it, you don't even know what you changed there. It might be that this one thing is now working because somehow after 20 prompts, you manage to write a function which works, but something different breaks and you don't have a clue that it actually happens. Those kind of things is what's actually dangerous, and why we should start to think about an AI competency plan in a company.
Kaloyan has a great comment. Use the tool properly. Spoon is for scooping, fork is for poking. I also saw a great take on this from the report and from empirical evidence from my own business, from coaching, is that it's great when you ask it, hey, I wrote this, can you simplify it, please? So I changed some code, I made a bit of a mess, can you simplify it? Like, is there a trivial simplification that escapes me right now because I've been looking at it for way too long? If I went to walk and I came back, I would probably rewrite it in a much simpler way. But you can sort of short circuit that test with a quick prompt of like, hey, can this be simplified in a trivial way? And it can reduce the lowering of complexity in some cases, but it requires a competent developer.
What you do. You need to know what you do. For example, if you have this, typically in JavaScript, we got very late into functions like sum or something, or reduce. And back in the days, we had basically an array. We created an array,
and they're still
then we
not
had a for
available
loop.
for generative iterators and iterative style iterators and generators.
Yeah.
They're only available for
So you produce
arrays.
actually a lot of boilerplate in order to get this simple function done. And when you tell AI to reduce that, it will create you something which will reduce or sum or something like that. The problem is that you still need to understand that that you are 100% sure that nothing was actually lost, right?
Yeah.
So there can be some...
And because of caveats, because of
exactly,
there's a second parameter, it might be
and
optional
gone,
if you didn't
right?
give the second parameter to reduce. So the first iteration might be different. You know, the first time the callback runs will be different.
You are still responsible, and that is what people need to understand. These days, when you work with AI, then you can't tell that, hey, but AI was telling that AI is smart. No. AI is just a tool, and you are this responsible person. It's a little
What's
bit
really
like
important to keep in mind is that Copilot Claude-generated code will give you a general average sort of temperature, average attitude towards coding style. So if your coding style is very good, it'll generally produce worse code than you could. But it has wider range. It saw some algorithms that you might only hear about. For example, the Zinich algorithm, the one that simulates the flow of liquids in a closed system of pipes. It's a very interesting algorithm if because you have to equalize pressure and flow rates, and they can flow backwards, right? Like that. That's the main issue. That algorithm is non-trivial to implement, especially if you see it for the first time. Like it's much more complex form of pathfinding. But the AI has seen it. Has seen a lot of plausible implementations of it. So it can just give you a working draft very quickly, but you can't modify it because you don't understand it. But it produce something for you that you can spin up in the browser with some UI and play with it. So it might help you produce a prototype that you can then explore to gain more intuition, rather than using it as a stepping stone onto the... You might not even keep the code, but you use the learning experience
and
from
prototyping.
playing
But this
with
is
it.
what I meant by not using it in a
but then
production environment.
It is your responsibility. So a junior is junior not because their code is of bad quality, but because they're lacking in communication skill and clarity, and they're overconfident. Like they are very bad at risk management. So they don't play poker. They just say, yeah, I think I can do it. Let's do it. So the issue is they are much more prone to keeping code like that. It's like, oh, it works. Yeah, let's keep it. Let's commit. Let's move forward. Rather than actually say, hey, I don't trust this response. What is worth noting from the DORA report is that there were very few cases where people said, no, AI is harmful. It's a waste of my time. So there was a very, very small minority. It's like 0.5% of people said that, no, AI is a waste of time. I'm not going to use AI. It's harmful by default for all use cases. So it was neutral at worst. And in most cases, people were able to find some positive from it. And again, context is a lot of the correspondents were 16 plus years of experience, a lot of engineers, a lot of engineering managers, a lot of technical engineering managers who do know how to code. So you need to keep that in mind. If you're a junior, the DORA report might actually be way too advanced for your background context. I just want to contextualize that because
on reading on LinkedIn about this topic, you get the notion that there is at least a high portion of people totally against this movement of AI. That is what I have. That's basically...
Personally, I also don't use Copilot because I had that early adopter experience, but I do use Claude and ChatGPT for a lot of blank canvas problems.
Yesterday I tried JetBrains.
I do Excalibur AI with Mermaid. That one's amazing. So whenever I do diagrams, I say, hey, I'm about to write an article. I'm going to diagram stuff like this. And you prompt it in English, and it produces a mermaid definition So it's a definition file for a flowchart, and then it renders it with Mermaid, and then it converts it to Excalibur components so that I can move them around, and then it gives me like a it takes care of like the flow, the symmetry, the shapes, the sizes, the text, like the shape is blocked in with the text. Like it takes care of a lot of like annoying stuff, and then I move it around, delete one, color one different,
I used
make
something
one.
like that in Miro, or somewhere else. I can't remember, but the output was crap, to be honest. It's not yet working like it's like.
No, it's only useful for like the simple first step to go from blank page to something, to use as a prototype to generate ideas.
If you have
rather
problems
than
doing it yourself, because I am actually faster doing it myself, especially diagramming, graphical stuff. I'm personally faster than letting it generate, and I need to modify it anyway because I have a very specific thing in my head. But for people who are not used to it, of course, it might be a help. But then it's a question again: are we competent enough to judge if the? So the point is it a good idea that AI is actually powering or elevating us to do things we couldn't do beforehand instantly? Or is it more like, hey, AI, for example, you can, if you don't know how to use, for example, shell, like standard Unix shell, right? You want to write some shell scripts. You have never done it before because you were a Windows person, something like that. And then you want to learn that, right? So you can just then blindly use AI to prompt something as long as until it works, right? So you basically use it directly in production without actually learning it. You don't learn to determine the outcome or reviewing it or saying that's good or bad. Or you say, hey, I'm using AI to actually just talk about it. I'm talking about that. I learn about it. I basically close the gaps. Then I start to try to do it myself. And then I go into the co-piloting process again. And that is what I would prefer. That is a form of actually working in a mature way with AI to understand that you are still the pilot and you only can do what you can basically feel yourself responsible and accountable for. And as long as you can't do that, you basically don't do that in production. You only do that in prototyping or learning cases. In chats, use advanced voice mode. This is what I do very often with ChatGPT, the new one. And I'm really talking about very complex things for sometimes an hour, right? I'm talking about that, then I get a summary out of that, then I'm rethinking that, I'm learning about that, and some days later I actually execute. This is
it's automated record and review. Like a record and review is like a traditional non-digital form of improving your capability and ability and skill as a public speaker. So you record it, you review yourself, you review the text, you review your posture, you review your tonality, you review the content, you review your flow, maybe even your volume or color of voice. And with AI tools where you can, record yourself, listen to yourself, transcribe yourself, modify yourself even with things like Descript, it gets a lot easier to make steps, or at least have somebody who is not judging you but isn't you to give you some insights. And I think that sort of objective observer phenomenon is also very useful, because sometimes I want to show my code to someone to get feedback, but maybe I'm a little bit self-conscious about it and I want to clean it up. But an AI is always neutral about it. Like, they don't care that it's unfinished and I can give them something broken and they'll figure it out. So it's, for example, if you ever have a code review and it doesn't compile, it's not finished yet, and you just want somebody's opinion, you send it to them, and it's like the first feedback will be, well, it doesn't compile. Can you send it to me once it compiles? And then AI is not so picky. But then, whether that's a productivity increase, I wouldn't even begin to speculate.
Again,
I'm conscious. I am conscious of time, so I just want to wrap up the flow part. There's one interesting bit. This one was here last year as well, which is, no surprise, the focus on generative cultures, or they call it transformational leadership. A lot of people, when they see the report, this is the part that just raises the eyebrows, because it's what does that mean? What is this word? And I think this summarizes it very well. So basically, Transformational leadership is the type of leadership that you described earlier, Adrian, where you're being very supportive, where you give recognition, where you give people freedom, where you communicate vision and values rather than just using them as code monkeys and doing assignment-driven development. But you actually,
can you zoom in?
Yeah, I can zoom in.
Yeah, just then it makes.
You want the numbers, right?
No, I think the audience need to be able to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so if transformational leadership increases by 25%, we have a chart, and basically, if this kind of leadership increases by 25%, then we have a net positive on job satisfaction, productivity, team performance, product performance, organization performance, and a very significant reduction in burnout. And these numbers in absolute magnitudes are larger than anything else that was studied in this year. So the effect of transformational leadership is much larger than AI, is much larger than using a particular language and using a particular framework. It's much larger than going from high-performing continuous delivery to elite-performing continuous delivery. I mean, it might be what enables you to do that step more easily. And just for clarity, what transformational leadership is, it is basically treating your organization like a generative culture. So you empower people to run experiments and you share accountability. You delegate authority and accountability rather than creating rules. Rules is a bureaucratic, a rules-driven organization is considered a bureaucratic culture where you're minimizing mistakes at the cost of innovation. And transformational leadership is a form of leadership style where you're communicating in a way that promotes psychological safety, in a way that is sort of factual and kind, but also direct to the point. So there's a level of candor that sort of elevates personal recognition while also connecting the team. So you don't have those like loan sharks and like those benevolent jerks, as you might know them from any company that you basically worked at.
How do you mean the Scrum Masters?
Possibly.
Maybe.
I don't want to single anybody here out. I want to end on a positive note. The point is, yes, this year was about AI. Yes, this year was about being user-centric. This year was about all those little things that are interesting that popped up, that, all the new shiny tools we have. But still, the largest chunk of productivity and or team performance and organizational performance you'll get by treating your coworkers with respect.
Yeah.
I
think
I mentioned flow. I mentioned flow in the show notes. The point of flow was to extend flow engineering, in particular. And if you're following team topologies, there's now flow engineering style of lean coming up. The point of there's been a DORA video about value stream mapping in the context of DORA research. And it's basically this: when you're value stream mapping, when you're doing a waste walk, extend that same level of respect to your customer and include the customer into your value stream map. So don't stop measuring when you think you're done. Stop measuring when your customer says, yes, I'm happy with this now. To then extend that same level of transformative leadership and respect and candor to the people who you're actually serving, who are actually paying your bills. So that's the bit about flow engineering. It was the least important bit. We're out of time. I don't want to dwell on it too much. Adrian, I cut you off. I'm very sorry. You were going to say something about leadership style and candor and psychological safety.
Yeah. I was. I think the main point is, and this is why I dislike those methodologies so much, which are based on these weekly deadlines, right? And what I call the deadline-driven development, which is Scrum is a part of that. And this is the reason why it's not like about the people, the Scrum Masters or something.
Agreed.
It's about that you feel yourself as a master. That's already one of the problems there. I don't like the terminology at all. It should be forbidden to use it like that. It should be a partner, right? It should be someone sitting next to the people and talking with the people. How fast are we actually? What can we do? And adjust, and not saying, hey, you need to get done. You need to get done. You need to get done. And you try to, have 4 sprints up front planned already, and you are already late with the 2, and you're still pretending that, or demanding that the last 2 needs to be still on time. And that doesn't make sense to me.
Adrian, we had a great post about that from Alan Hollop today, I believe.
Did we?
And again, I don't know how to spell his name. Alan? How do you spell his name? I'm just gonna... Alan. Double L-E. Okay. If I... I'm very sorry. I'm trying to find the post. Just to show it. So he's one of the anti-agile. He's one of the pure agile thought leaders who doesn't like Scrum, which in my book is a good sign. But I think this echoes what you just said very well. So Ellen says, if you have tight deadlines, you're not working with agility. First, unless the deadline is real, for example, tax filing deadlines and an accounting app, it simply should not exist. Made-up deadlines are a form of bullying, and there's no place for that in an effective work environment. Next, even when the deadline is real, we handle it by working small, releasing often, every few days max, and always doing the most important things first. By the time you get to your deadline, all that's left to do is optional trivia. Artificial deadlines or even commitments to squeeze more work out of people fly in the face of the sustainable pace principle. Look at Menlo Innovations for an example of doing it right. Read Joy Inc. Joy Inc. is his book recommendation for us. And I like this idea that, just do the most important thing first and release software on demand. And that takes care of most of the nonsense. That takes care of not needing sprints, that takes care of not needing deadlines, that takes care of not needing releases on a calendar, that takes care of not needing estimations. Just release software once it's done, right? So don't batch releases together. Don't do one thing and then another, and then another, and then another, and then we release 10 things at the same time. That's in the DORA report, by the way. That is the core focus. Release batch size, rollouts, have your team work as a team so that they can push out each individual item on demand. That is the highest elite performing level of productivity. What a lot of companies in the middle do, the low to mid performers, they follow Scrum. They release only when the calendar says it's release day. They have artificial deadlines hoping that it will inspire their team to work faster, which it doesn't. It slows them down.
That's not inspiration. That's the opposite of inspiration.
Yeah, that's dictatorship.
Negative motivation.
Yeah, that's communism.
That's the whip methodology.
It's fear-based. It's whip. It's the whip. It's fear-based, right? So they want to minimize the punishment for not meeting the goal, which means that they will also try not to take risks. And sometimes they need to take risks to try new things and innovate, and that just backfires. I had a great situation. That's a great example to this. This week, somebody asked me, hey, my team doesn't want to write tests. What are we doing? Are we going with this new initiative? And I highlighted this example of, well, if you're punishing them right now for not meeting your busy deadlines, and now you're going to tell them you also need to write tests, you create an environment for them where they either miss the deadline and you punish them for that, or you create this incentive of if I skip the test, it'll be done sooner. In this sort of short-termism thinking. So if you incentivize them to take that path by punishing them when they don't meet the deadline, but you'll also punish them if they don't write the tests, Now you're creating a developer that says, well, you punish me if you do this. You punish me if you do this. Why should I care? You punish me either way. I'd rather just not get in trouble and just see what goes below the radar. And then that's how you get lethargic, disincentivized, low psychological safety, burnt out developers. And that's how you get that low to mid performing range. Right? So that's individuals working individually to not get punished. And then the calendar decides when the team has some like meaningful batch size to roll out. Mm-hmm. And that is not respectful of the customer, that is not respectful of the employees, that is not respectful of the stakeholders, that's not respectful towards the craft and the science that goes into it. And the big productivity increase comes from flipping this around. Have the team work as a team so that they can create individual increments that they can be rolled out on demand as frequently as necessary every day with an automation pipeline that is not judgmental, so that the team can have a sustainable pace, celebrate, and feel good about working together. And the only way to do that is to give them the freedom to say, hey, you guys understand what the priorities are, get it done. Mm-hmm. You don't need deadlines. You understand what the priorities are. I trust that you will not do the things that are not a priority. Or if you do so, you will tell me, and you probably have a good reason that I need to understand. But you hire 7 Scrum Masters, a product owner, a director of engineering, a head of engineering, a VP of engineering, a Scrum Master, and your CEO wants to go on vacation, and that organizational structure quickly deteriorates. Rant off. Rant over. Sorry.
Okay, then let's wrap up because I don't have much more time.
Yeah, that's all I have for today. I don't have any material. We went through everything. If there's any questions, now would be prime time. We will be finishing the stream in exactly 3 minutes. Now is a good time to chime in. Increasing the volume on the background music to give us a little bit of a boost on accountability.
Exactly, a deadline. So you just set up a deadline.
No, I just gave a promise. I'm gonna turn off the
3-minute deadline.
Turn off. No, but I'm done. So you see, I'm done, and I know that deadline is just
pressure on
there.
the audience.
Expectations.
You burn out the audience.
Oh, you mean I set deadline for them?
Yeah.
No, you don't need to meet a deadline. You can ask me a question and I'll answer later. Like, it's not a biggie. You know, it's just in case you want to have it answered now. You can. Yeah. No, but it's a good point. It's a good point that you pointed out because we were just talking about it. I don't want to be hypocritical about the statement and the rant that I just made.
It's a big topic. So AI is important. The DORA
but continuous delivery is more important.
It is. So that is
continuous
actually
delivery.
how you make software, and the other thing is how you can improve a little bit on personal level and maybe a little bit on team level. But those are improvement optimizations these days.
Yes.
It will change in the next 2 decades, clearly, and will be way more influential, but it's not today. It's, in fact, simply not today.
AI is like having a standing desk, faster internet, and a nice ergonomic gaming chair. Like it's those niceties along the way, and then you sort of step
all
up
the things I don't have.
But primarily it's about just involve your customer in the value stream, right? So if the customer says, hey, I still want changes to this, even though it's not what we agreed, respect that. That's value stream mapping, that's a waste walk. Analyze your processes. The DORA metrics will basically be a proxy indicator for why aren't you doing continuous delivery? Like, where does this stop? You know, where does on-demand become impossible?
I mean, it is interesting in how many people in a DORA report actually said they are not working in continuous delivery. Mm-hmm. Actually, quite a long way from that even.
Yeah, it's only the elite performers, right? So 80% are not there. Or kind of there. 60% are not there, and then the remaining 40%, half of them are there, and the other half is sort of along the way. But I always say, you know, and the report also emphasizes it, you know, it's not about measuring KPIs perfectly. you measure KPIs and you start rewarding people for KPIs, they will start gaming the KPIs, and then it becomes a stupid KPI. I forget which paradox this was. It's one of those laws where if you focus too much on measuring one thing, the measure becomes useless. Tony, why do our coaching sessions always become a stream? Tony's one of my clients, and he has awesome stories. Hey Tony, great to see you. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight to finish off as we're on the time. You don't need to measure. If you call me to coach, and I ask you what the problem is, and you tell me you don't have tests, that's enough. Take care of that problem. If you're not doing TDD or something equivalent, if you have low test coverage, if your software is not releasable on demand, if you release less than a couple times per week, that's enough. That's the problem. You don't need to measure to figure out which subspecies of the problem you have. Like, that's enough. You can ask your team, hey, where should we start? The tests, the releases, the time we spent code reviewing, and just take action this week rather than measuring to death and wanting to have accurate data in 6 months. And that's just a huge waste of time. You're leaving money on the table by not addressing the obvious pain point, which is usually lack of tests, not understanding legacy code, or not being able to release on demand, and somebody has to click a button and it takes a week, and merge conflicts, etc. Adrian, you dropped the link?
Yeah, that was just the video I was talking about beforehand about AI. Maybe that was interesting.
That's your Stackable CTO channel that is now taking off on YouTube, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Really enjoying it.
Cool. Well, we have to wrap up. Please check out Adrian's video. Thank you for being with us here live. If you do watch the recording and have some follow-up questions, do ping us on LinkedIn, or DMs on LinkedIn are fine, and this thread is fine. YouTube is also fine. I do check the comments regularly. There's no stream next week, so we will see you in 2 weeks. And I forgot about what. We have a guest in 2 weeks, I believe.
Georgios, yeah.
We have Georgios. Awesome. We will talk about the path of the junior. Yeah. And sort of junior to mid sort of experience.
We will basically announce that, or I will announce that a little bit earlier. List that so we have a little bit time to announce that. Will be a very interesting topic, and maybe we can even introduce the subtopic of today about junior and AI a little bit in that day.
Awesome.
Very important as well. And yeah, Georgios is quite, let's say, enthusiastic about that.
Brilliant.
Okay, good. I actually need to go. Thank you, everyone, for being together with us, and see you in 2 weeks then on this channel again.
See you in 2 weeks. A little bit of elevator music and signing off. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.